I used to really fight this because I was like, well, I'm striving to be better than I was yesterday. I know that I could be doing better. I know that there's things in my life that could be better. But when we come at our life from self-criticism and constantly looking at what we're doing wrong, that doesn't work. It's not effective. It's not effective when somebody else comes at you that way and says, you're doing this wrong and you should change. And if that does work for you, it's probably because you grew up with abuse and trauma and you were raised with people being extremely harsh and critical towards you. And so I am so sorry for how you grew up, for how you were treated. That's time for us to treat ourselves in a healthier, better way. It's time for us to love ourselves the way that we give compassion and love towards other people. It's time for us to say, I love me so much that I'm not going to get mad at myself when I don't do what I should. That I'm actually going to have compassion like I would towards a child, because really that's what we are. We're grown-up children. And a lot of people are fighting their whole life to prove that they're not a grown-up child because they were taught and had it beaten into their head that behavior or that identity, that's wrong, that's bad. And so we have to first off remove these labels of bad and wrong off of our life. I don't go around anymore telling myself that I'm bad or wrong or these negative phrases. I tell myself that I'm very good and amazing and awesome and walking in greatness, and that I'm somebody that was born to create incredible things, and shifting my mindset, my focus towards goodness, towards excited energy, towards being happy and excited for every single day, and not doubting myself, not doubting that I was born for greatness, that I was born to do great things. I want you to ask yourself that. Were you born to do great things? And do you believe that you were? Your brain is going to go to work to try to tell you the 101 reasons why that's not true right now, that your present reality isn't that, and that you need to perform differently in order for it to be true, okay? So your brain needs no help with that. What we have to be intentional to do is do the opposite. To love ourselves, to encourage ourselves, to say you're giving it your best shot, to truly believe that we are giving it our best. And then to actually have your actions follow that. To not be coming from comparison, comparing yourself to somebody else and what they're doing. That's the worst thing that you can do. If you're comparing yourself to me and what I do every single day, I'm at a different place in my life and my business. I've been building this business in this industry for over 19 years. And so to expect yourself to instantly just wake up and that's what you do is unreasonable. Maybe you've heard, well, if you want to get wealthy, just do what wealthy people do. But there's a process to that. And the first part of that process is self-love and self-compassion. Loving yourself enough to give yourself a break. Loving yourself enough to not be so hard on yourself. Here's the reason why most of us won't do that. We actually believe that it's too risky to love ourselves. That there's actually a risk of bad things happening if we do. That there is a possibility of really bad, negative stuff happening in our life if we love ourselves, if we have compassion. And that's where I was, as I believed that any moment that I had self-compassion or self-love, I would go into this state of mind where I would just do all this crazy stuff, where I would just, go to the strip club at night and I would just drink and party all the time. And so I had in my mind that if I loved myself, if I had self-compassion, if I believed that I was amazing and great and good and stopped punishing myself, that I would then suddenly start to shift to do those unhealthy things. I mean, as a married man with a child, really, if you're unmarried, it's not healthy to be doing that as well. But that was my life, But when I was DJing in Austin and partying, as I was out every single night and drinking and all forms of debauchery, and so if you think about that, I had inside of me, well, I'm going to be self-critical because it's going to keep me on the straight and narrow. It's going to keep me headed in the right direction. It's going to keep me down the path that I wanted to go. But what ended up happening was it actually created a brick wall in my life. And then what that brick wall was, my destiny was on the other side of it. What God called me to, what God created me for, was on the other side of how critical I was. And I was actually limiting what I could do, where I could go, my level of influence, what I could create, what I could imagine, by being self-critical, self-hating, self-punishing, and holding this unreasonable standard over my life. This unrealistic standard of perfection that if I didn't measure up to, if I didn't reach up to this level of perfection, that I would just self-loathe, self-hate, and beat myself up. And that's not healthy. And it didn't help me become who I am today. In the last 5 months, my wife and I have grown our coaching and course business over $500,000 in sales in the last 5 months. It's $100,000 a month average. Give or take, a few months were higher, a few were lower. And that didn't happen by being self-critical. It actually happened as soon as I started giving myself compassion. As soon as I started setting boundaries, saying, no, I'm worth making a priority instead of sacrificing myself for everybody else's desires for me. I'm worth making a priority instead of giving up what I want just to make other people happy. And I was living my life doing what everybody else told me to do. Doing what everybody else told me that I should do to be successful. And while we were making six figures, right? What took me from six figures to then a 7-figure level income? Self-compassion, self-love. See, I knew the blueprint. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to promote offers. I needed to put stuff out there. But I was so critical of everything that I would do that I was incapable of putting anything out there. I was incapable of showing up as my most powerful self because I was like, well, you're not good enough here. Well, you're not good enough there. Well, you're not good enough there. Well, you could be better there. And this criticalness limited my ability to do anything. Now, listen, I know this isn't everybody's story, and I'm learning something new. I don't need to project my story onto you and say that you're possibly experiencing this, but this was my experience for the last 35 years. Grew up in a hyper-religious church that was really just not, it didn't even believe in the gospel, in my opinion, and was taught that, you know, my worth came from what I do. That if I perform enough, then I will have value as a person and value on planet Earth. But that simultaneously I could never measure up, so I was always worthless. Always a nobody, a nothing. No value. And these were the messages that I was taught. These were the messages that were beaten into me over the years. Obey, be praised. Do whatever you want, get beaten. And many of us grow up in our lives, maybe you've shared a similar experience, and what it ends up training you to do as an adult is operate with a framework where instead of you getting beaten by your parents or your teacher or your pastor, you beat yourself up. And you end up punishing yourself anytime you go outside of the bounds of perfection. It's time to stop doing that. It's time to love ourselves. It's time to see ourselves the way that God sees us, as perfect and beautiful and very good, that when he looks at us, he says, you're so amazing. And then start talking to yourself that way. Start believing in yourself that way, that you are beautiful and so good and amazing every single day. When you start making this a practice in your life, I'll tell you, I promise you what'll happen. It's actually going to be very hard in the beginning. It'll actually be very difficult because your brain, your body, the chemistry in your body physically will fight against it. It will fight you for doing this because it doesn't want to change its normal behavior. But once you start doing this as a habit of loving yourself and giving yourself self-compassion and not being so self-critical, the things that you dream were possible in your life, you're going to start to have the courage to do them. You're going to have to start to have the courage to do what previously seemed impossible. You're going to have the courage to ask for help because you're not going to be afraid of being criticized or people saying that you're stupid or dumb or not good enough. You're not going to be afraid to try new things. You're going to be excited to experiment in your life. You're going to be excited just to try something out, just to see what happens. And that, my friends, is where things start to change. That's where everything changes in your life. And you start to create the most amazing, magical ideas that you have. You start to manifest the things that you only could have dreamed of years ago, the things that you only could have hoped would be possible. They become your reality. Now you gotta obviously do the work. You gotta obviously show up and actually do it. I'm not saying like you be all happy-dory and then everything happens. Like, that's stupidity. Don't even go there with me. You gotta actually do the work. Usually we actually stop ourselves from doing the work because we're so critical. We actually stop ourselves from doing the work because we're so hard on ourselves. We have this level of excellence that's actually keeping us from ever creating what we want. As soon as you quit doing that, you'd be amazed what happens in your life. Listen, if this has helped you, again, I got podcast episodes, over 196 podcast episodes, over 1,000 videos on my YouTube channel. We got a $7 New Year's special that we're running with over 17 hours of training and coaching with me to help you get a vision for your new year. If you're a coach, if you're a mentor, if you're a trainer and you're somebody saying, I want my 2023 to look different than 2022. I want my future to look different from my past. This will help you do that. And so grab the link. It's only until January, I think 5th or something around there. January 5th might be. You have until that deadline to grab it for $7. And so I can't wait to work with you. I can't wait to see you on the other side of this. On the other side of this message, when you start to apply it in your life, when you start to do the things that I'm talking about right here, how your dreams become a reality. Talk soon, everybody. Have a good one.